يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي وروحي أحرفي ولساني.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Remember the last thing we did? We did intention for Qurbani, right? Qurbani shares abroad. We did that. Right. So we'll continue with what? Qurbani, that one aspect with regards to Qurbani in a different location. So if a person, he does Qurbani in a different location, in the sense that what he is staying in one place, one location, and his animal to be sacrificed is in a different location, right? Then what is the ruling? Understand? As we mentioned earlier, that is allowed, jais and permissible, right? So long as it is done really properly. Now, if the two locations where the person is, the one whose Qurbani is obligatory upon, he is doing Qurbani in a distant land, another land where there could be what, a time difference, all right? Time difference could be what, a couple of hours, or it could be what, an entire day, right? Hours or entire day. So we mentioned earlier that the timing for Qurbani is from the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the 10th, 11th and 12th until sunset. The 10th of Dhul Hijjah will start from Ishraq, except that it is a condition that Salatul Eid be performed in that area, in that locality before Qurban, before what, that slaughtering could take place, alright? So if a person, what, he slaughters before Eid Salah could be what, performed in that area, then what, that Qurbani would not be valid. The meat would be halal and permissible to eat, except that would not suffice for Qurbani, right? Now, a person, what, his animal is what, in a foreign land, and there's a time difference between what, him and where his animal is going to be slaughtered. So Ibra and what, consideration is given to what, the place where the animal is going to be slaughtered. Understand? Their timing, when it is what, their 10th of Dhul Hijjah, it could be, as we mentioned, it could be a difference of an entire day or more. So their 10th of Dhul Hijjah, and after what, their Salatul Eid, right? That would be what? That would be considered. So you don't have to go and call a person and say, listen, we have 3 hours remaining for what? To perform Salah, or what? For Salatul Eid to be performed. So don't slaughter it now, slaughter 3 hours afterwards. No. Their timing would be considered, right? Their timing would be considered, so long as it is a permissible time for the animal to be slaughtered in that location where the udhiyah is taking place, where the slaughtering is taking place, then that would suffice. It's not necessarily what they follow our timing, right? It could be even before what? Before Eid. Sometimes what? An entire day. Today, by us is what? Arafah. In that place in which the animal is slaughtered, or going to be slaughtered, is what? Already what? Eid. The 10th of Dhul Hijjah. So you don't have to wait until, okay, we see what? The 10th of Dhul Hijjah, until what? The Salatul Eid is performed here for the slaughtering to be valid across there. No. As we mentioned, the timing where the udhiyah is taking place, the animal is being slaughtered, that is taken into consideration, right? So the place where the Qurbani animal is considered, that is, the slaughtering of the animal will be based on that timing, right? That timing. Not the place where the person is who's doing the Qurbani, right? Alright, and we mentioned the issue also with the Qurbani shares abroad, right? Sometimes a person doesn't know, right? In these mass, in the Qurbani, doesn't know, okay, who is sharing with him in that bull, right? Understand? Okay, in Trinidad you might know, okay, the individual who may be sharing with you in that bull personally, but at least, right, the organizers would ensure that what everyone in that bull are Muslims, right? How that is verified abroad, wallahu a'lam. You might have a Shia, you might have a Qadiani in your bull, you don't know, right? They do Qurbani also. Now, and we also mentioned this, teaching us a few places, so sometimes if I mention it here or mention it there, right? Understand there's a difference between the Qurbani and Sadaqah, right? Qurbani and Sadaqah. Many people would advertise Qurbani as what? Sadaqah, helping the poor and the needy. Understand this is secondary. You want to help the poor and needy, you can do it otherwise, right? Qurbani is what? Is a separate act of ibadah. Sadaqah is what? A separate act of ibadah. One act of ibadah does not replace the other act of ibadah. For example, a person what? In the day of Eid, Qurbani, an animal, for example, a sheep is $2,000. So a person is saying, you know what? I take in my $2,000 and I'm going to give it to the poor. Right? I'm going to take what? $10,000 and give it to the poor on that day. Right? Listen, if you take $1 million and give it to the poor on that day, in place of Qurbani, that person would be sinful. Why? Because he is replacing the act of Qurbani. Yes, you get rewards for what? Your Sadaqah, except that person would be sinful for what? Not doing Qurbani. So Qurbani and Sadaqah is two different things. Right? Qurbani and Sadaqah is two different things. As we mentioned, Qurbani is what the mere slaughtering. Right? What you do with the meat afterward, that is up to you. That is why the jurists, the fuqaha, they mention, yes, you share it into what? 3 portions. And that is mustahab, desirable, but not that is not mandatory. You share it in 3 portions, you take some for yourself, you give some to your friends and your family, and 1/3 you give it to what? The poor. But if a person takes all the meat and give it to the poor, then he gets what? More rewards. But not for Qurbani, more rewards for what? Sadaqah. Given to the poor, that is Sadaqah. Otherwise, Qurbani is what? The mere slaughtering. Right? The mere slaughtering. So one act of what? Ibadah doesn't replace the other act of ibadah. Qurbani is one act of ibadah, and helping the poor, giving sadaqah to the poor is a separate act of ibadah. Right? And on that day, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he mentioned there is no act any more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on the day of slaughter and the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, Yawm al-Nahar, more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jalla than what? Than slaughtering, right? So even though you take $1 million and you give it to what? In charity, and that person didn't slaughter on that day, then that person would not receive that reward. Yes, sir. The next slide there was subhanallah. If you watch it, you can see it from here, no? Right. The issue of what? Clipping the nails, cutting the hair. Understand? In the Hanafi madhab, this is what they call mustahab, recommended. Mustahab and recommended, understand the laws of the Sharia. Fard, wajib, you have sunnah of 2 types. Mu'akkada, ghayr mu'akkada, mustahab, mandub, mubah. These are what the levels of what? The ahkam. When we speak about, the hadith mentions about, refraining from clipping the nail and cutting the hair, then that act is considered to be what? Mustahab. Meaning what? It is not fard to refrain from it. It is not wajib to refrain from it. It is not what in that emphasized sunnah to refrain from it. Right? So it means that if a person were to refrain from clipping the nails and cutting the hair, that is a good act, inshallah he'll be rewarded. But if a person what cuts his hair or clips his nail, he is not sinful. Understand? He is not sinful if he cuts his hair or clips his nail if he intends to do Qurbani. But it's better that what? He refrain from clipping, refrain from cutting. We need to understand what the law, right? If a person believes that what it is obligatory, it is obligatory to what? To refrain from what? Cutting the nails or clipping the nails, and he has made that action to be fard. That action is not fard, no wajib. So is it what? It is something recommended. Yani tashbihan lil hujjaj. A person resembles those who what? Yani those in ihram performing the hajj. Alright? Those in ihram performing the hajj, then what? They are not allowed to clip the nails, right? And cut the hair and these acts unless what? The animal is slaughtered. Alright? So in resemblance to them, otherwise it's not something that is obligatory or even what? Wajib. Type. It is mustahab. Type. Well, having said that, there are certain hairs in the body that must be removed. Alright? That is why the Prophet ﷺ mentioned what the sunnah to remove these unwanted hairs, the pubic hairs below what? The armpit. What? The sunnah is what? Once for the week. And if you miss once for the week, khalas, roll over to the second week. And rarely you will miss the second week, but if you miss the second week, you go over to the third week. Right? The hadith mentioned after 40 days that becomes makruh and dislike. It becomes makruh and dislike. A person performing what? Salah, any act of ibadah, what? All these what? Hairs growing to that extent is makruh and dislike. Right? So even though a person doing Qurbani and what? That person for whatever reason hadn't, until now he hasn't what? Removed those what? Unwanted hairs and what? And the 10th of Dhul Hijjah and what? The 1st of Dhul Hijjah enters and he intends to do Qurbani, then what? There's no what? Difference over here, he has to remove it. Alright? He has to remove it.
So this sunnah is once a week?
Yes, once for the week. No, 4 days is the max, it shouldn't cross that. Alright? It shouldn't cross that. Once for the week is what? This is the sunnah. Right? Some hadith, some scholars interpret as once for the week, some scholars interpret in every Jumu'ah. Right? Because sometimes the word Jumu'ah, many a times it refers to, yes, no, Jumu'ah your chance, it has what you need, the day of Jumu'ah. Right? And also the word Jumu'ah is used, yani usbu, yani a week. A Jumu'ah, yani a week. So the sunnah is what? Once for the week. Now. And on that day also, yes, we hear, okay, one is what? Clipping the nails, cutting the hair until the animal is slaughtered, right? And the other aspect is what? Yes, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ did mention that a person what? The first meal that he should partake of on that day is from his animal, right? There is no for we in Trinidad here, right? When you get in your meat, normally when you get your meat, you get in the meat lunchtime or after lunch, then you have to go and cook it. Alright? Understand? Most people, or most of us, what? We get what? Busy with slaughtering and processing once for the year. We are not professionals in that. Right? The Arabs, they what? They were khalas. Now for now, they would what? Slaughter and they would what? They would cook that. You understand? So you don't have to wait what? Lunchtime or after lunch. And some people get meat about 3, 4 o'clock. What are you going to do? Understand? That day, we should not resemble what a person who's fasting. There are 5 days in a year in which what? Fasting is what? Haram. Is prohibited. There's 5 days in a year in which what? Fasting is what? Prohibited. The 2 Eids, right? Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, which is the day of Qurbani, and 3 days after Qurbani. So Qurbani plus 3 days, the days of Tashriq. Ayyam at-Tashriq. So you have the day of Qurbani, which is the 10th. A person not allowed to fast on the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th of Dhul Hijjah. So a person what? Not eating straight until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. What he's doing? He is resembling a fasting person. Right? He is resembling a fasting person. So that person can sort out his animal quickly and what? Cook from it and eat, then khalas, good, that be the first. But if you know your meat coming so late, right? A person should not refrain from what? Refrain from what? Eating and consuming any for what? That majority of the day. Right? So, and some people even call it fasting. You know, I had a fast until the animal, until I get the meat, until I cook from the meat. No, there's no fasting on that day. Shazid, you good? When I see him, you're not happy when I see him, mashallah. Since the first day I come asking for Shazid. Alright? Good, mashallah. Now, so the animals are allowed for what? Qurbani. Right? We mentioned in the beginning when we define any Qurbani, ذبح حيوان مخصوص في وقت مخصوص قربة لله. To slaughter a specific animal in specific days for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Allah azza wa jalla. Understand? These ibadat, we benefit from it. Allah azza wa jalla doesn't benefit from our Qurbani. If the entire world do Qurbani, Allah Azza wa Jalla are going to benefit. We benefit from our Qurbani. Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned, لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا. The meat doesn't reach Allah Azza wa Jalla, the blood doesn't reach Allah Azza wa Jalla. We benefit from that Qurbani. Right? So the animal, it must be what? Specific. Right? So we spoke about what? We spoke about what? No, we didn't mention that yet. Okay. The specification with regards to the animal. We spoke about the specification with regards to time. Right? With regards to the animal, Bahimatul An'am. This include what? Goat, that whole what category, goat, sheep. And you have what? Cattle. So that whole what family. Cattle, you have what? Whatever you call it. Bull, buffalo, bison. What else we have in that? Like that? Right? And you have what? With the camel. Right? So with regards to the goat, right, it must be, understand here, it must be 1 year, enter into the second year. You can reach it, no, it must have 1 year, complete 1 year, enter into the second year. Understand, if these what conditions are not met, our Qurbani would not be valid. The meat will still be halal. Understand, you could slaughter a goat any age. Alright, but for Qurbani, there's specification. Understand, the same specification for Qurbani is the same specification for what? Hajj. To slaughter for Hajj, and the same for what? Aqiqah. Right? So the goat, it must be what? It must be a year. Right? The goat must be a year. Now the sheep, and you need some misconception with regards to the sheep. Alright? Many people believe that, okay, once the sheep is what? 6 months and up, you could use that. No, that is incorrect. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, yes, he made any exception for the sheep. Illa yani al-jaza'. Jaza' is that sheep that what? That enters, that has 6 months upwards. Right? Less than a year, from 6 months upwards. That sheep would only be valid if it's 6, 7, 8, until what? Before what? 12 months. If it is what? If it is in a flock with sheep that are a year old, and you cannot tell the difference, who will tell you that is the owner? Hey, because he knows when the animal born. He will say that is what? Hey, that is just 7 months worth. That is just 8 months, right? But you as an onlooker, you cannot tell the difference. You cannot say this sheep looking what? This sheep is what? Is smaller, right? That sheep, that's a sheep that has what? The farmer come and tell, listen, it has 1 sheep over here in the flock. That sheep is only 8 months. The rest is what? 1 year. You as an onlooker cannot tell the difference. Why? Because it has the same size, right? So many people have the assumption that, hey, once it's 6 months and up, you could use a sheep. No, that Qurbani would not be valid, right? That Qurbani would not be valid. It must be what? It must be what? It must have a size that what? Looks like a 1 year old. Only then it would be any valid. A big deer, right? So understand, wild animals not allowed for Qurbani. You have even the wild goat, right? The wild what? Bison. Wild animals, right? Wild animals are not allowed, right? No, when you say not allowed, wild by nature, right? So even if what? You tame that animal, that is a wild animal, wild by nature, right? So a person that with domesticated what? Birds like duck and what? This and that, I'm minding a crow, I'm minding a what? A raven, right? So even though you tame that animal, by nature is a wild animal. So once it's a wild animal, Qurbani would not be valid, right? The Qurbani would not be valid, alright? It have what? Unless, listen, in the human, regards to human being, the human kingdom, the lineage follows what? The father, right? Ud'uhum li abaihim, and call them by the names of their father. Everything what? The lineage follow the father, all right? In the animal kingdom, right? What is considered is the mother, right? The mother. So, for example, what? A horse permissible to eat, not so, right? A donkey not permissible to eat, right? Many people mention horse not permissible, but that is a misconception also. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, he did mention what? It is makruh to eat what? Horse meat. Not because the meat itself is makruh, because what the horse alatul jihad is that this is what you're going to use to what? To fight. This is what you're going to do to protect your people. This is your army. This is what? This is your weapon, right? This is your tanker. You get custom meat on all your horse. Now we're going to fight with donkeys, right? So based on that, he mentioned is makruh and dislike to eat it, what? Eat the horses. Otherwise, there's nothing what wrong in eating what? Horse meat, right? Not the ones you get over here after 20 years, they give it to you, you know, right? So now if I what horse is a crossbreed what? With a horse and a donkey, right? Yeah, normally what the mother would be the smaller one, which would be the donkey. So the young from that now would follow what? The mother. So if there's a cross between what? A horse and a donkey, and the mother is the donkey, then that animal would what follow the mother. That would not be permissible to eat, right? But if what? The mother is a horse, the mother is a horse, and the father is a donkey, and that would, we have what? Artificial insemination is not that possible, right? Then the young would follow what? The ruling of the mother, which would be what? A horse, right? So after, if you understand that, now we go to what? The goat and the deer. People mention that, listen, crossbreed between what? A goat and a deer, right? So the deer itself cannot be used for Qurbani, but if there's what? The mother is what? The goat, and the father is the deer, then the young from that, it would follow what? The rule of the mother, which would be a goat, and it could use it for Qurbani. Right? The deer, you keep it for something else.
So you could use both male and female animals?
Right, both male and female, right? And this is also another misconception where people believe that what they cannot use what? Female, right? Understand, the norm is not to use female. People already use female, not be, right? Otherwise, if a person were to use a female animal, then it would be what? It would be valid, right? The Qurbani would be valid, right? But as we always mention, like in Trinidad, somebody tell you, okay, do Qurbani on their behalf, right? In their minds, what they want is what? They want a male, they want a bull, they want a cow, right? So if you're going to do you need a female animal on their behalf, they must be informed, right? It's not like, okay, yes, this is permissible and not valid or whatever, and I'm doing it. No. Understand, we are, those who do Qurbani for others, we are just what? Agents. Alright, so if this is what they want, right, this is what we give them. Right? Because if you tell a person, listen, even though the validity there, you tell a person, I slaughter a cow for you, you know. A cow, a female goat, then he what? He not satisfied. Right? So he don't want proof and evidence to show validity and is valid and this and that. He just not satisfied, and a person should be satisfied with his what? His ibadah, right? But yeah, to use a female, right, is what? Is allowed. You know, some people what? They have goat and the goat make young about 10 times, and then afterwards, you know what? Time for Qurbani, we could have a Qurbani. Yeah, you could do, but that's not your best animal. If it make your one about 10 times, what kind of meat, how the meat going to be, right? How the animal going to be, what? You're under pressure for a whole hour, anyhow, right? They cook it for 2-3 hours, right? So Qurbani, we look for what? The best with regards to meat too. That is why the castrated animals, and many people what? They think otherwise, right? The castrated animals, these animals the meat in these animals are better. Right? I mean that when the animal is castrated, it produces what? More meat, and the meat is of a better quality. So these animals could be used for Qurbani. Right? That is not a defect, right, to use what? Castrated animals.
So what if you kill the mommy, the cow, she have a baby in she belly?
Right. So if you what? A person will do that deliberately, right? They will do it deliberately. So now if you what? A person slaughters, right? A person slaughters a female cow, right? A female, well, a cow is female, and a person slaughters a cow, right? And that cow happened to be what? Pregnant, and you see what? The young is still alive. Then what are you going to do to that young? That young, you leave that young to what? To grow, right? Remember your entire animal, this is your Qurbani. So now you allow that young to grow, right? And that young will be given into sadaqah, right? You can benefit from that young. That entire animal will be given in sadaqah. Why? This is your whole Qurbani, right? A person, for example, he has what? He purchased a female, well, a cow. He purchased a cow, right? Or a female goat for Qurbani. Just say the allowance there, and the milk, right? He cannot benefit from that milk. That milk has to be given to the poor. Understand? His animal is what? Lillah, right? So that would go to what? That would go to the poor. All right. A person with the meat, right? With the meat also understand, you could consume your meat, you could give your meat, right? You could store your meat, but you cannot what? You cannot sell your meat or trade your meat, right? Or any part of the animal, right? Sell, you know what? I don't eat any head, or sell a head. Head selling for about $500, or sell that head, or sell the foot. Even the skin, something that you may not be using, right? You're not allowed to sell it, to trade it, right? If a person what? Did sell it or trade it, right? Then what? That entire money will be given in sadaqah. It must be given in sadaqah. This is your whole what? Animal for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? So you can't trade and buy and sell your Qurbani animal after you slaughter it. Right? Yes, if a person purchases an animal for Qurbani, right? This is my Qurbani animal. And afterwards, you know what? I want a next animal instead. Right? Then he's at liberty to do that, right? He can change his animal. You know, but I don't say it's Qurbani animal already. I'm making intention for this animal already, you know. No, khalas. You could what? You could exchange that. You could sell it and get a next one. Right. So there's the sheep and there's the goat. As for the cattle, right? The cattle, the bull, the bison. People who use bison. Nobody never asked for bison. I don't know. Okay. That more expensive or cheaper? Expensive? Well, because the taste is a nice taste, or there's a little farmer, right? Right, so it must what? The cattle, it must have 2 years entering into the third year, right? 2 years entering into the third year. Boy, my bull is a year and a half and then big like a bull that have 2 years and a half. No, you don't work like that, right? The goat, the bull, and the camel, the age must be there. Forget the size. The size is what? That is secondary. That is irrelevant, right? The size is what? Irrelevant, right? What is important is the year. It must have what? 2 years, complete 2 years, enter into what? The third year. That's for the bull. As for the camel, in the 5 years, complete 5 years, enter into what? The 6th year.
So, next question.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in beach hunting, right, we have some big cattle bison that get away and live in the wild, and you catch one a big one.
You really still living in the wild. Right, we just say that, but ask people in Cedros, hey, that man own that. Yeah. He just have it outside over there, right? You might say a wild dog, a wild cat, right? But if you ask the people living in the area, hey, there is a man own, and he just leave it like that. Not owned by nobody?
You could go and catch that. And when them fellas plant the rice and they go time and them Akalu boys and them plant the rice in beach day, they'd have big bison, they will catch them, come up and over a big one, they will catch it and kill it, shoot it down, and they will pass it over and go and find some wine.
But generally, right? Understand? Generally, the rule in what? Domesticated animals, right? The general rule is it has an owner. Wild animals, the rule for wild animals, type asaydu liman wajada. That soy, that praise for the one who find it, whoever find it. You go in the jungle and you shoot that, but you shoot, that is my deer. No, whoever shoot it is theirs. This is ruling for what? The wild animals. As for the domesticated animals, the general rule is that what? It belongs to somebody, right? You see a duck come by you, but he just fly and come. Nobody own that, right? He just come by me and look, he stayed. He don't want to leave too, right? So generally what? The general rule is that domesticated animals, it has what? That is the default position. It has an owner unless you could prove it don't have an owner, right? Wild animals, right, the general rule is what? It is what? Liman wajada, whoever find it first, that is theirs. Alright? So, Daya do a little research on that one. Alright? So a person came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he mentioned, a sheep, a stray sheep just come, right? And, so what to do with it? If I leave it, what will happen? Somebody might take it, or it might die, right? Or animal might eat it, right? So the Prophet ﷺ told him, okay, khalas, benefit from it, right? So this is what he did, right? We mentioned the ruling afterwards, the fiqh rule, and he said, benefit from it, right? Then afterwards he asked, well, a camel now, right? A camel and he come and we know it lost, and if we just leave it, right? So he came on the same line. So the Nabi ﷺ got angry with him. You know what? A camel that could survive on its own, right? If even you leave it to just the owner take a good while to what? To find it. That could live without water for a good while. It could defend itself, right? So you don't worry about it being what? Harm or what? Destruction commentate, right? But listen, this sheep over here, even though the Prophet ﷺ told them what to benefit from it, the ruling is, if the owner comes, then you would have to compensate. The owner is what? He has what? They give two options to the owner. It comes to you, either you benefit from it or you give it to the poor, right? And the ruling is, if you yourself as a poor person, you can benefit from it, right? If you're not a poor person, you give it to the poor, right? So even though you give it to the poor, you don't benefit. The ruling is, when the owner comes, he has what? One of two choices, right? You can tell him, listen, that animal, I give it to the poor. So if you want the rewards, the rewards is yours, right? There's one option, he can accept that. The second is that what? He has the right to what? Demand compensation from you, right? He said, no, I want back my animal. So you have to compensate, right? So even about the thing would have die, right? Or give it to the poor, right? You have to compensate. And this is the rule about what? Luqata. You know what? Things that you find. You find something, and you have to what? Look for the owner. You have to display it. You just, you know what? I find it in the road over there. I find it behind by the masjid over there. Somebody will just pick it up. So you have it, and you have it in your house, and nobody You didn't make no announcement, right? So if you can leave it in the ground, that's up to you. But the moment you take it up, is your responsibility to look for that owner, not just to keep it in your house. And I find it in the road, right? So now, we're looking at what? Defects in animals, right? Defects in animals. All we just mentioned, if any of the above animals, the animals we just mentioned, the sheep, the goat, the cattle, and the camel, if it is less than what? The specified age, right? Understand? It could be slaughtered and eaten, but it would not suffice for Qurbani. It's not okay. You can't slaughter a bull less than 2 years. You can't slaughter a goat less than 1 year. You could do it, but it would not suffice for Qurbani, right? When we speak about specification of animals, those animals that are free from what? Major defects. Otherwise, there are no animals free from what? All forms of defect. Right? So any minor defects are overlooked, are pardonable, but major defects would render that Qurbani invalid. The animal, as I mentioned, would still be halal and permissible, right? Once the laws of slaughtering is applied, except it will not suffice for Qurbani. So what? Major defects. Major defects, the animal, for example, is blind. The animal what? Born without ears. The animal born without ears, or the ears is what? Cut off. More than a third of the ears is cut off. More than a third of the tail is what? Cut off. So these are what? These are considered to be what? Major defects. Alright? With regards to what? The horn. Alright? Animals born without horn can be used for Qurbani. Right? Animals born without horns can be used for Qurbani. Now animals with horns, if the horn is broken, can it be used for Qurbani? Yes, it could be used for Qurbani if the horn is broken. Except that the jurist mentioned, if it is broken from what? The root, right? It is a defect and it cannot be used for Qurbani. right? It's broken from the root. We're not speaking about the socket, the whole socket come out. No, it's broken from the root itself, right? Now you have the issue of what? Dehorning, debudding the animals. This is where the animals at a young age. How old? You think the horn? Right? At a young age, the horn is what? Remove. Right? The horn. How you call it? You dehorn the animal, remove the horn. Right? So now if the horns are what? Understand the animal born with horn. And what you do? You remove the horn. Right? For whatever, any security, for safety and whatever. Alright? So the ruling here now, if you look at what? The action of what? Removing the horn from the root, then that would what? That would be what? On the same line, that would be what? Tantamount to breaking it from the root. Alright? The horn being what? Uprooted and broken from the horn. And they are what? There are many scholars, they would mention that it is not permissible because that is considered, it is uprooted and broken from the root. Right? And I still have over here, animal dehorned at a young age for safety reasons, Qurbani would not be valid, right? But understand, if an animal born without horns, permissible to use, right? If a person were to dehorn an animal, then what? To dehorn an animal at a tender age, that should not be what? Considered a major defect, right? That should not be considered a major defect. Right, so I don't really see an issue in what? Using an animal that has been what? Dehorned. You can tell the difference animal born without horn and dehorned. Some mention the animals born without horn, right? You don't see nothing on top, nothing. The animal that has been dehorned, you might see a little stump. So you can't tell the difference, right? Right? So that shouldn't be a major issue, right? Animal dehorn, right? That should be a major issue. So we probably could change it over here too. We'll leave it then, right? So understand, I mean, this is the benefit of the class. So when I hear a person saying, okay, it is not permissible to use that for Qurbani, and the other saying what? It is permissible, at least you know, okay, where they're coming from, right? It's not like, okay, they're confused, where they're coming from. Right, those mentioned is not permissible. They was that is tantamount to what? The horn being broken out from its root. Right? And the other one mentioned, that is not a major defect. Why? Because the animal itself, if born without a horn, it will still be permissible. It will be permissible without any karha, any dislike. Alright? If you look at what? With the ears. If the more than a third of the ears is what? Cut off. Right? You can't use that for Qurbani. Similarly, if the animal born without ears, you can't use them for Qurbani. So we see what consistency there. Without ears, born without ears, and that is what? Rare too, right? That's a defect. Born without ears, no Qurbani, right? Has ears, but what? More than a third is cut out, okay, no Qurbani also, right? So there's consistency over there. But as with the budding, inshallah, that should be permissible. The earring and no chain and thing. So these things with regards to animal earrings and necklaces and this and that, animal not mukallaf, not subject to the laws of Sharia, right? That does not apply to them. So they can mow their ears, mow their nose, right? They put on a what? Necklace for them too, right? Nothing wrong with that. Right? Normally when they're tagging them to what? They clip their ears. I mean what? The tag is beyond their ears. Alright? Then they bow the nose also to what? To control them. Now, so we continue with defects in animals, right? Defects in animals. Animals, any limping, lameness in the leg. Right, we always say about if an animal limping, you cannot use for Qurbani if there's lameness in the leg. That is true to a certain extent, except that what? If the animal, understand, listen, this would normally happen after you purchase an animal. You don't go buy a man here. You see this bull? This bull selling for what? $12,000, right? This size. And the same size, he's selling for what? $9,000 because you have a limp. Okay, I'll take this one. No. When you're going to buy, you buy a good animal. But after purchasing an animal, what this happens? What are you going to do? Right? So a defect enters over here now. That animal, if it is limping, right, except that what? The lame leg is at least touching the ground. Understand? It is at least touching the ground. Probably what? The animal not taking support, can't take support on that leg, but the leg is at least what? Touching the ground. You could still use that for Qurbani. Understand that you already purchased the animal, right? So once what? That lame leg is touching the ground, it can be used for Qurbani. But if it is not even touching the ground, then that is a major defect, right? That is a major defect and cannot be used any for Qurbani, except in one scenario. The animal was good, right? Now taking the animal to the place of slaughter, this is where the defect occurred, right? The animal was good before, walking properly, everything, right? Or if it was lame, there was some lameness on what? One leg at least was touching the ground, right? But now, you take that animal and you bring in that animal to the place of slaughtering, right? The day of Qurbani, whenever you're slaughtering, you're taking it to the place of slaughtering, and while taking it to the place of slaughtering, right, what it develops is what? This lameness or this limp, right? It would be valid then, right? But all these animals, as we mentioned, right, if it is slaughtered, right, it is halal. But major defects is halal. We speaking specifically only about Qurbani, right? Specifically about Qurbani, right? A castrated animal is not a deficient, there is not an animal with defect, right? That is a valid animal, right? No.
So suppose we manage to bull or cow or whatever, right? And while we manage it before, and we see what it has put there that animal okay, it's not an effect. To do that.
Yeah, once it, I mean, what happened in the past, that is irrelevant, right? We speak about what? They're going to slaughter, time for slaughter. So a person would say, listen, like a farmer, right? He would see animal limping, right? He would see animal limping, but he knows, listen, hey, in 2 weeks' time, he good, right? You know, with this printer, with this khalas, after 2 weeks, after 3 weeks, he good, all right? So that's not an issue. It was limping before, it was injured before, right? So as we mentioned, if a person he purchased a healthy animal that is eligible for Qurbani, thereafter a defect enters upon that what? Enters upon the animal. That major defect enters, right? Understand? Yeah, I think we mentioned, I can't remember if we mentioned last week, right? A person purchased an animal for Qurbani, right? Now a major defect entered. A major defect entered that animal. That animal now you can't use it for Qurbani because it is a major defect. Alright. So the rule is what? There are two types of what people who do Qurbani. Those upon whom Qurbani is obligatory and those in Qurbani is not obligatory. Right? As we mentioned earlier, listen, a person can do Qurbani even though Qurbani is obligatory upon him and he chooses to do Qurbani and khalas. He can do that. Right? But a person upon whom Qurbani is obligatory, he doesn't have a choice, he has to do it. Now, a person upon whom Qurbani is obligatory, mention, okay, what determines what? When Qurbani is obligatory. We did that already, right? So now Qurbani is obligatory upon an individual. So if Qurbani is obligatory upon that individual, that obligation is upon his shoulders. It has nothing to do with the animal he purchased. For example, a rich person, upon whom Qurbani is obligatory, has the nisab, he purchased an animal, he purchased a goat, a sheep, right? His obligation is not restricted to that sheep or that goat to the extent that what? If that sheep dies or is stolen or a major defect enters that, he has to replace it. Why? The obligation is upon him and not the sheep, not the animal. He has to replace it, right? As opposed to a person upon whom Qurbani is not obligatory. Qurbani is not obligatory upon him, but what he did, he purchased an animal with the intent of Qurbani, so his obligation is connected to the animal. Qurbani is not obligatory upon him. It's not obligatory upon him, but he wants to do Qurbani, so he purchased what? And he has sheep with the intent of Qurbani. That sheep is his Qurbani. The obligation is connected to that sheep. So if a major defect enters that sheep, he can still what? Slaughter it. That is his obligation. If that sheep dies, khalas, he doesn't have to replace it. If that sheep is what? Stolen, he doesn't have to replace it.
So it is a both people and they have 7 people. And in this 7 people, 3 of them not do the compulsory Qurbani, Qurbani. And those will come on there. So the next, this 3 of them, we said, well, we want to come to more money again because Qurbani is not compulsory or part of the Qurbani. We're going to have the next 4 others.
They look for the shareholders, right? Or they stand in with the entire amount. Or do the 3 of them would do what? That one bull, or they would ask for other shareholders, right? So understand here, if we look at what? Remember, understand here, the consistency in the laws of the Sharia. If the Sharia mandates that a person upon whom, understand here, okay? If the Sharia mandates that a person upon whom Qurbani is obligatory, he purchases an animal for Qurbani, that animal happens to die or becomes what? Stolen, lost, or a major defect enters that animal, then that person is what? Obligated to replace that animal. You understand? That person is obligated to replace that animal. As for a poor person, is not obligated to replace that animal, right? We always come back to this whole concept of what? Nisab. Understand? The whole concept of nisab, but some people just don't seem to understand, right? If you're using a nisab of what? $3,000, $3,500, and you buy a sheep for what? $3,000, $2,500, right? Why? Because according to you, the Sharia mandates that you do Qurbani. So what? You have to do Qurbani, right? So you purchase a sheep for what? $2,500, and you have all the other costs connected to that sheep, right? That sheep, a major defect enters that sheep, or the sheep happens to die, right? Now, the rule is what? The Sharia mandates that a person, that individual replaces that sheep and buy what? A next one. So over here now, that is what? That is it. What Sharia would allow that, would mandate that? That now you have to go on, but listen, if you've spent 25, how much remaining? You have 1,000 again, boy, right? So there's all the money you have, there's all the zakatable assets you have, $1,000. So now you're saying, okay, I only have $1,000, wife, children, this, that, and now the Sharia mandates me now to go and what? Get next sheep? What deen we following? So it makes more sense that a person what? He uses what? Understand? Time to calculate zakah, you might get away with your silver nisab, right? Because this time everybody talking about nisab. Qurbani time, you hear people talking about nisab. Nobody talk about nisab. Qurbani time, right? But it's the same nisab that what? That makes Qurbani obligatory. You understand? It's that same nisab, except you use non-zakatable assets also, right? You also use what? Non-zakatable assets. So if a person, for example, has the gold nisab, understand? He has the gold nisab, Qurbani becomes obligatory upon him. He purchases an animal, right? The gold nisab is about 50 plus, right? He purchases an animal, and his animal what? Dies. Then he is still in a position to what? Replace that animal, right? And you know what? That person has what? Less than 50, say he has $40,000. He falls short of the nisab. Qurbani is not obligatory upon him, but you know what? He can still do Qurbani if he wants. It's not obligatory. So this is where a person where Qurbani is not obligatory upon him, he can still do Qurbani. So this would apply here also. But if you use what? The silver nisab, and they say, okay, that one whom Qurbani is not obligatory upon, he can still do it. Then we're talking about a man had $2,000, Qurbani not obligatory upon, how he can do Qurbani? So anyhow, we continue. This is where we cut. Move forward. Right? So that's it. That is the ruling. So if we acknowledge that, then it should be consistent. All right. right? Shares in Qurbani. Qurbani shares, we mentioned this already, right? This is what, this revision, right? And you all know, a goat what? One share, a sheep, one share, right? Yeah, this sheep are doing for the family. No, the sheep is not for the family, right? The sheep is for me and my wife, me and my children. No, the sheep is for one individual, right? And you always, I don't for whatever, this always, remember all this. I mean, what last year I did for my wife, for me to this year doing for my wife. No. Understand? If what, husband and wife, both of them, Qurbani is what? Independently what? Obligatory upon them. Obligatory upon what? The husband and the wife, then both of them, that is two separate Qurbani. Understand? That is two separate Qurbani. That is two sheep or two what? Two goats or two shares. Right? So it's simple. Yes, there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned what he slaughtered what? Two. Right? But Nabi ﷺ slaughtered what? Two. The first one was for himself, and the second was what? His what? وَهَذَا عَنْ أُمَّةِ, the entire ummah. That is an optional Qurbani, as we mentioned earlier. An optional Qurbani, you could include any amount of people, right? But a wajib Qurbani, an obligatory Qurbani, khalas, one person per share. A small animal, one person per small animal, right? And as for what? A large animal, a camel, cattle, you need 1/7 of it, alright? You don't have cow over here, but it's really cattle. Right? And also what? Understand, 7 is what? Max. Is the maximum amount. It's not the, we are looking for 7 people, I have to get 7 people. No, that is the maximum amount. Otherwise, one person can do a bull for himself. 2 people can what? Share a bull, but it must be equal. Whatever amount of shareholders, it must be equal. Except the maximum amount is what? Is 7. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people could do a bull. Right? If you're going to share, if it's more than that, then what the maximum amount is 7, not more than 7, right? With the condition of what? Each person, what? The share is what? Equal. But you come in later now, you will give you a little less than 7, right? No. You know what? We're giving you a share in the bull, but you know what? The head and the foot, you have no share in that. Just the meat. No, that's invalid, right? Every hair, 7 people own it. We're going to do the hair, forget, you're not using the hair, but every part of that animal, it belongs to the 7 shareholders equally, right? Equally.
So how we just share up the tail and the foot and the head and thing? Because the tail is one and we have the 4 feet and the head is
Understand, this over here is different, right? It's like inheritance, right? This house, a man died, leaving what? 4 sons, right? And what? A house, so quarter. A house for he, quarter. No, khalas. Meaning what? 4 of them what? Equally own that house. Right? As for distribution, no, there's a different how we're going to distribute it, right? It should be equal, right? But if a person listen, this is what where mutually any agreement comes in, right? Yes, everybody understand we give one person a foot, right? But you know what? 7 people own that foot. We say, okay, this foot for you, right? And then we have the tail. 7 people own the tail, right? 7 people own what? 1 foot. 7 people own the head, right? 7 people own the ears, right? So they should know that, but listen, we had to share it up. And mutually they would decide, you know what? You take that, I don't want that. And if there's a mutually any agreement, then that is good. But if you find a person insists, understand, even though a person cannot insist, hey, I want the head, I want the tail. He cannot insist. Or we'll cut it in 7 and I'll give you, but he don't want that, right? So we mutually agree by here, well, you take the tail and what your portion, your claim to the foot, we will take it. So it's something that you have to what? Mutually agree upon, right? Otherwise, all would have to be what? Shared in what? 7 equal any portions, right? And then afterwards, how are we going to share that? We have to clean it, but he don't want to pay to clean, right? So he has to pay to clean. You understand? How are you going to get these 7 portions anyhow? So all these things over here, what? The easiest thing is what? Avoid trouble. Some people joining your bowl, right? They call a person, he don't ask, but how much pound of meat I get in? Right? And how much this and how much and this, bull full boy. Share, when we Qurbani, the shares, we don't close off already. Right? You have to mutually anything over here. Yes, meat you can share by the pound, you can share by the weight, you can share that properly, right? If a person say, you know what, here, what, the head, it costing what, 500 to what, to see about the head, and everybody agree to what, to contribute to that 500, and man, what, cleaning it, and then you're going to cut it up, and we're going to share it, because everybody want the head, and you're going to share it in what, 7 portion, yeah, you could do that, right? So, you have to what, certain things you have to mutually agree, but one person cannot claim or I want this and nobody else can get it, right? And if he does that, they say, okay, what, listen, you make arrangement, if that's the case, you want the tail, right? But your claim to what, the foot and the what, and the head, he said, no, I don't want that, and everybody agree, right? Like what, sometimes we have what, the same inheritance, right? They had the house what, belong to what, the 4 sons, right? And one mentioned, you know, listen, I don't want no house, I will just take the car. But everybody has share to the car, but you know what, okay, we are mutually agreed to give you the car. Next one says, I don't know house, no, I just want the money in the bank, right? I just want the cash. The next one says, I want that piece of land, right? But you can mutually agree, right? Or this person takes the house, we got an inheritance here now, right? And he pays off everybody what? Their monetary claim to it, right? The house worth $100,000, one person what takes the house, right? And he pays what? Each of the 3, $25,000. Otherwise, if they can't come to what, an agreement, what would happen? The house would have to be liquidated and the cash would be shared equally, right? We come back to Qurbani.
You mentioned that if a bull becomes lame, a little period of time before it is to be sacrificed, that you cannot use it, right? You also mentioned that a person who Qurbani is not obligated upon,
He can use that.
he could use it. Right. Let's say 2 or 3 persons in that one, their Qurbani is not obligated. And 2 or 3 persons, Qurbani was obligated upon them. They also in that one. Right? Now, I understand that the person whose Qurbani is obligated upon them, they have to find another animal. What about that animal still? That animal could still be sacrificed to the benefit of the ones who Qurbani was not obligated upon.
You asked my hard question there. You understand the question, right? Alright. Very hardest question again in a long while.
If you could kill the 2 of them, because
Alright.
all the obligated people will buy them, they want to get obligated.
No, I mean there's always what, concession, right? When there's what, difficulty over there, it's not like
So, Mufti, if it will be valid for the ones who Qurbani is not compulsory, right?
it will be.
If they kill the animal, it will be valid for the ones who Qurbani is not compulsory on, right?
So we kill that one and then the next fellas buy
No,
the
but
next
they
one.
will still give them another share, but they're not Qurbani for them, they want to
They will just get it. So the fellas don't take no share from the one that lane.
No, but listen, remember, when you speak about any compulsion and this and that, everything what it goes back to what? The 10th, 11th, and 12th, right? Otherwise, we had to see, we had to check that. Alright. Remember, this slaughtering is one, right? One slaughtering on behalf of what? 7 individuals, right? 3 of them, Qurbani was obligatory upon them to have the nisab, right?
You see, also you have to take into consideration that the persons who collect any money for this should find out from others that it was obligated upon you or not, so that you both have
No, that is haraj. I mean, to ask a person what, hey, how much money you have? How much money you have in the bank? That is what you're asking him.
Like without that,
Alright.
you can ask them because you would then even know who obligatory and who not. Because you're in a goal and you don't know.
No, it's not that you see if a person what takes share one of the shareholders in the bowl is a person upon whom Qurbani is not obligatory. That is not an issue. Alright? You could have a bull doing your intent is Qurbani, and the other individual his intent is Aqiqah. The next one his intent is what? If in Saudi his intent is what? Had. Right? So all is different what? And all is different what? Aspects over here. Alright? One for Qurbani, one for any Aqiqah, one for any Had, any Hajj. Right? All would be valid. Alright? Whether that be what? Optional or mandatory. Right? All would be valid. So it's not a condition a person has to find out whether Qurbani is obligatory upon him to what? So he can take a share. He can be a shareholder with him. No. Alright? That's not a condition. But you see over here, yes, if the animal what? If the animal develops a major defect, right? A major defect, then the animal will have to be replaced. Right? That's the general rule. The animal will have to be replaced if what? The shareholders are those upon Qurbani is obligatory. Right? So now our old time setting, yeah, we understand that. Right? They would sort out. But now setting like we have now, if you doing Qurbani for a person, right, they don't want to hear your animal, my animal have a defect in it. Right? They hold you responsible for that. You have to replace that. Right? Whether the shares be what? Optional. Not the shares be optional, then the person be what? Who do the Qurbani was obligatory upon him or not, right? Similarly, you collecting shares, right? And this is where what people don't understand, but this is the risk you take, right? You doing Qurbani for individuals, right? And you purchase what? You purchase a bull, $10,000, $12,000. You purchase a bull, $15,000, right? And you collect the people money, yes. The night before Qurbani, it dead. You call in what? Zaid, hey, animal. They don't want to hear them animal dead. So it makes sense you call them, right? What are you going to do? They understand, listen, you're responsible for that, right? You're responsible for that. You have to replace the animal, right? They come Qurbani morning and they see the animal what limping so. No, that go work, right? No, you have to replace that, right? And I'm not speaking about the Shad'i ruling, right? The Shad'i use just an agent, responsible for that. If you bring a bull, you tell me to buy a bull and bring it by my house and keep it for tomorrow, right? So that's why I do. I buy the bull, I bring it by my house, keep it for tomorrow for Qurbani, right? And now I bring it by my house and somebody come and thief it in the night. I'm not responsible for that. Right? But they will hold you responsible. But Shar'an, you're not responsible for it. Right? So anyhow, that's still an answer that question over there. Right? So right, so if it is slaughtered, right, understand, if it is slaughtered with the Qurbani of those upon whom the Qurbani is obligatory, would that be valid? Right? So we'll keep that for next week, inshallah. Next week was the last class before Qurbani, right? That week at Qurbani, we're not going to have any classes. Right? Next week will be the last Qurbani class. We passed time. All right. We'll stop here. We'll leave this for the next. We don't have much to anyhow. Right? We'll continue next week. طيب جزاكم الله خيرا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
يا لغتي عربية حسبي بأنك منطقي وبياني عربية قلبي وروحي أحرفي ولساني